Everything you believe about yourself is a lie. I know that sounds harsh. Maybe even offensive. But please, stay with me for just a moment. The stories you tell yourself, I'm not good enough, I always fail, nobody really understands me, it's too late for me, these are not facts. They're not truths carved in stone. They're just thoughts. Mental events that appear, hang around for a while, and then disappear. Like clouds drifting across the sky. But here's the problem, you've believed these thoughts for so long that they feel like your identity. They feel like who you are. The Buddha saw through this illusion 2,500 years ago. He discovered that we are not our thoughts, and that realizing this is the doorway to freedom. Let me show you what he found. Part 1, The Storm Inside, Understanding the Monkey Mind. There's a term in Buddhist teaching that might make you smile when you first hear it. Monkey mind. Picture a monkey swinging frantically from branch to branch in a dense forest. It never rests. It grabs one branch, then immediately leaps to another. It chatters constantly. It's always agitated, always moving, always searching for the next thing. This, the Buddha taught, is what our untrained mind does. One moment, you're thinking about what to make for dinner. Next, you're remembering an argument from 1987. Then suddenly you're worried about whether you locked the back door. Then you're planning next month's budget. Then you're criticizing yourself for not exercising enough. Then you're wondering if your friend is upset with you. Sound familiar? This mental chaos isn't a flaw in you personally. It's the nature of the human mind itself. Every person who has ever lived has experienced this restless mental activity. But here's where the Buddha's teaching gets interesting. Most of us don't just have these thoughts. We become them. When a worried thought arises, we don't simply notice it. We are worried. When an angry thought appears, we don't observe it with curiosity. We are angry. When a self-critical thought emerges, we don't recognize it as just another mental event. We are that failure, that disappointment, that inadequate person. The Buddha used a beautiful metaphor to describe this. Imagine the sky. Vast. Boundless. Open. Always present. Now imagine a storm moving through. Dark clouds. Thunder. Lightning. Rain. The storm is dramatic. It's powerful. It demands attention. Looking up from the ground, you might think the storm is in the sky. But is it? The storm arises in the sky. It moves through the sky. And eventually, it passes. The sky itself remains unchanged. It was never disturbed by the storm. It simply allowed the storm to come and go. You are not the storm. You are the sky. Your thoughts, those worries, fears, regrets, and judgments, are like weather patterns moving through the vast space of your awareness. They appear. They stay for a while. And they pass. But awareness itself, it remains. Peaceful. Unchanging. Untouched. This isn't just poetry. This is a practical truth that can transform how you experience every moment of your life. Part 2, A Story of Awakening, the Buddha Beneath the Bodhi Tree. Let me take you back to that pivotal night over 2 millennia ago. Siddhartha Gautama had tried everything. Born a prince in what is now Nepal, he had lived the first part of his life surrounded by luxury. His father, hoping to protect him from suffering, had created a palace of pleasure where Siddhartha would never see old age, sickness, or loss. But reality cannot be hidden forever. When Siddhartha finally ventured beyond the palace walls, he encountered what Buddhist tradition calls the four sights: an elderly person, a sick person, a corpse, and a wandering spiritual seeker. In a single journey, the young prince saw the truth of human existence, that all bodies age, all bodies fall ill, and all bodies eventually perish. This is the human condition, he realized. And yet that peaceful seeker seemed to have found something beyond this suffering. What followed were 6 years of intense seeking. Siddhartha left his comfortable life and tried every spiritual practice available in ancient India. He studied with renowned teachers. He practiced extreme physical austerities, fasting until his spine could be felt through his stomach, denying himself sleep and comfort, pushing his body to the breaking point. And none of it worked. He was still suffering, still searching, still caught in the endless loop of his own mind. Perhaps some of you understand this kind of seeking. Maybe you've tried different paths: therapy, self-help books, meditation apps, retreats, philosophies. Perhaps you found temporary relief, moments of insight, periods of peace. But somehow, the fundamental restlessness remains. If so, you're in good company. The man who would become the Buddha felt exactly this way. Then came the night that changed everything. Siddhartha sat beneath a fig tree, later known as the Bodhi tree, or tree of awakening, and made a vow. He would not rise until he understood the true nature of suffering and found genuine liberation. As he sat in deep meditation, something extraordinary began to happen. His mind, as all minds do, generated thoughts. Memories arose. Fears appeared. Desires emerged. Doubts whispered. But instead of engaging with these mental phenomena, instead of believing them, fighting them, or trying to silence them, Siddhartha simply observed. He watched thoughts arise like bubbles floating up from the bottom of a still pond. He noticed them without grasping. He allowed them to pass without resistance. And in that profound observation, he discovered something that would become the foundation of his teaching. He was not the one thinking these thoughts. He was the awareness in which thoughts appeared. The thoughts themselves were like clouds, substantial seeming, sometimes beautiful, sometimes dark, but ultimately temporary and without permanent form. And he, his true nature, was the vast, open sky that had always been present, unchanged by any mental weather. This was the moment of awakening. This was enlightenment. Not a supernatural event. Not an escape from reality. But a clear seeing of what had always been true. Part 3: Modern Storms, When Our Minds Create Suffering. Now, let's bring this teaching home to where we actually live. Consider Margaret. Margaret is 67 years old and recently retired after 40 years as a high school English teacher. She'd looked forward to retirement for decades, imagining travel, time with grandchildren, and finally reading all those books she'd accumulated. But 6 months into retirement, Margaret is struggling. She wakes each morning with a vague sense of dread. Her mind immediately begins its familiar chorus: "You're useless now. You don't contribute anything anymore. You're just waiting to die. Your best years are behind you. You should have saved more money. You should have been a better mother. You should have taken better care of your health. These thoughts feel absolutely true to Margaret. They don't seem like random mental events. They feel like accurate assessments of her life. And so Margaret suffers. She withdraws from friends because she feels she has nothing interesting to say. She declines her daughter's invitations because she doesn't want to be a burden. She spends hours watching television, not because she enjoys it, but because it temporarily drowns out the critical voice in her head. Is the voice telling Margaret the truth? Let's look at the evidence. Margaret touched thousands of young lives during her teaching career. She raised 2 children who became kind, capable adults. She has a husband who loves her, grandchildren who light up when they see her, and friends who miss her company. None of that has changed. What has changed is that Margaret's mind, suddenly without the structure and identity that work provided, is generating a storm of fearful, critical thoughts. And Margaret, like most of us, has never learned that she doesn't have to believe every thought she thinks. She is confusing the storm with the sky. Or consider William. William is 72. Last year, his wife of 48 years passed away after a long illness. William was her primary caregiver, and in many ways, caring for her gave his final years with her a profound sense of purpose. Now, alone, William's mind replays the same scenes over and over. Did I do enough? Could I have gotten her to the doctor sooner? Why didn't I notice that something was wrong earlier? What if I had been more patient on those hard days near the end? The guilt is crushing. Some days, William can barely get out of bed. Now, grief is natural. Grief is even healthy. The Buddha himself taught that loving means we will experience loss, and loss brings sorrow. But William isn't simply grieving. He's torturing himself with thoughts that masquerade as truth. His mind has constructed a story, you failed her, and William has mistaken that story for reality. What if William could step back, just slightly, and recognize that these thoughts are mental events arising in awareness? Not facts. Not true. Just thoughts, powerful, painful thoughts, but thoughts nonetheless. This recognition wouldn't erase his grief. It wouldn't bring his wife back. But it might, just might, create a small space of peace within the sorrow. If these stories resonate with you, if you recognize your own mind in these patterns, then I want to invite you to do something simple. Take a breath right now. Just one conscious breath. And as you breathe, notice, there is an awareness here, in hearing these words, feeling this moment. That awareness has been with you your entire life. It was there in childhood. It was there through every joy and every difficulty. It is here now. That awareness is not your thoughts. If this teaching is speaking to something deep within you, I hope you'll subscribe to Buddha Coha, where we explore these timeless teachings every week. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next conversation. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message today, please share this video with them. Sometimes, the right words at the right moment can change everything. Now, let's go deeper. Part 4, The Prison We Build, Why We Suffer When Life Simply Is. The Buddha made an observation so simple that it's easy to miss its revolutionary nature. He said that suffering, dukkha in the ancient Pali language, is not caused by what happens to us. Let that settle for a moment. Suffering is not caused by aging, though our bodies do age. Suffering is not caused by loss, though loss is inevitable. Suffering is not caused by change, though everything changes. Suffering arises from how our minds relate to these experiences. Specifically, suffering arises from three mental habits: resistance, the mind's refusal to accept what is already happening; judgment, the mind's constant evaluation of experience as good or bad, right or wrong, fair or unfair; clinging, the mind's desperate grasping at pleasant experiences and rejection of unpleasant ones. Think about a simple example. You're sitting in your living room on a quiet Saturday morning. The sun is shining through the window. A cup of coffee warms your hands. In this moment, nothing is wrong. But then a thought arises: I should be doing something productive. Suddenly, the peaceful moment is disturbed. You're no longer present with the sunshine and the coffee. You're caught in a mental story about how you should be different from who you are. Another thought follows: when was the last time I called my sister? She probably thinks I don't care about her. Now guilt has entered. The moment that was perfectly fine 30 seconds ago has become uncomfortable, not because anything in the room has changed, but because your mind generated thoughts and you believed them. This is how we imprison ourselves. Not with external chains, but with internal stories that we mistake for reality. The Buddha captured this truth in a teaching recorded in the Dhammapada: the mind is everything. What you think, you become. And in another powerful verse, we are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. Notice he didn't say thoughts are bad. He didn't say we should eliminate thinking. He said that what we think shapes our experience of reality. And here's the crucial part: we have a choice about our relationship to our thoughts. We can believe them blindly and suffer accordingly. Or we can recognize them as mental events, transient, workable, and not ultimately defining. Part 5: The Way Out, Awakening Through Observation. Here is perhaps the most liberating thing the Buddha discovered. You don't have to fix your thoughts. You don't have to improve them. You don't have to silence them. You don't have to fight them. You simply have to see them clearly. When you observe a thought, really observe it, something remarkable happens. The thought loses its power. Try this right now. Think of something that's been worrying you. Some nagging concern or fear. Got it? Now, instead of engaging with the content of the worry, instead of trying to solve it or argue with it or push it away, simply notice that worrying is happening. Say to yourself, gently, there is a worried thought arising. Not, I am worried. That's identification. There is a worry arising in awareness. Do you feel the difference? In the first statement, you are worried. The worry defines you. You and the worry are the same. In the second statement, there is you, the awareness, and there is worry, a temporary mental event. They are not the same thing. This small shift is the beginning of freedom. The Buddha didn't achieve enlightenment by developing a perfectly peaceful mind that never generated difficult thoughts. He achieved enlightenment by fundamentally changing his relationship to whatever arose. Thoughts continued to appear, that's what minds do. But they no longer imprisoned him. They were seen, allowed, and released. There's a beautiful teaching attributed to the Buddha: in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. Letting go doesn't mean suppressing or denying. It means allowing thoughts, emotions, and experiences to arise and pass naturally, like clouds moving through the sky of awareness, without gripping them or pushing them away. Part 6. Practical Steps, Finding the Sky Within. So how do we actually practice this in daily life? The Buddha and his followers developed many techniques, but let me share 3 simple approaches that anyone can begin today. First, the pause. When you notice yourself caught in difficult thoughts, stressed, angry, worried, or self-critical, pause. Just pause. Take one conscious breath. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice the sensation of air entering your lungs. In that pause, you create a tiny gap between stimulus and response. In that gap, awareness can emerge. You might notice, oh, I'm caught in thought again. This simple recognition is more powerful than it might seem. It's the moment of remembering that you are the sky, not the storm. Second, naming. When a thought pattern emerges, give it a simple, neutral label. If you're worrying about the future, worrying. If you're replaying a past conversation, remembering. If you're judging yourself harshly, judging. The label should be gentle, almost affectionate. Not, ugh, I'm worrying again, what's wrong with me? Just a quiet acknowledgement, worrying is happening. This naming creates distance. It helps you step back from being in the thought to observing that a thought is occurring. Over time, you'll start to recognize familiar patterns. Oh, there's that worry about being a burden to my children. Hello, old friend. I see you. There's something almost humorous that can emerge here. The mind's dramas, seen clearly, often reveal themselves to be rather repetitive and predictable. The same fears. The same regrets. The same criticisms. Playing on a loop, like a radio station with a very limited playlist. Third, returning. After pausing and naming, gently return your attention to the present moment. What is actually happening right now? Not in the future your mind fears. Not in the past, your mind regrets. Right now. Maybe you're sitting in a chair. Maybe you can feel the texture of the fabric beneath your hands. Maybe there's a sound in the room, a clock ticking, a bird outside, the hum of a refrigerator. These simple present moment experiences are your anchor. They're always available. And they're remarkably peaceful when not overlaid with mental commentary. The Buddha taught, do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. This isn't about avoiding planning or learning from experience. It's about recognizing that the present moment is the only place where life actually occurs. And when we're lost in thought, we're missing it. Part 7. The Stories We Tell, Seeing Through the Illusion of Self. Here's where the Buddha's teaching goes deeper still. It's not just random thoughts that we mistake for reality. We also mistake the thinker for reality. What do I mean by this? Each of us carries a story of who we are. This story includes our history, our personality traits, our roles, our successes, and our failures. It includes what we're good at and what we're not. It includes what we deserve and what we don't. This story feels absolutely solid. It feels like the truest truth. But is it? Let me ask you something. Who were you at age 5? What did you believe? What did you want? What did you fear? Now think of yourself at 25. Different beliefs. Different desires. Different fears. At 45. At 65. The person you take yourself to be right now, this collection of thoughts, memories, opinions, and self-assessments, which version is the real you? The Buddha taught that what we call self is actually a flowing process, not a fixed entity. It's like a river. We call it one river, but the water is constantly changing. What gives it continuity is not some unchanging substance, but the ongoing flow itself. This can sound threatening at first. If there's no fixed self, then what am I? Don't I just disappear? But actually, the opposite is true. What disappears is the limited, constructed, suffering self, the one that needs constant defense, constant validation, constant reassurance that it's okay. What remains is awareness itself, vast, peaceful, and free. You don't become nothing. You recognize that you've always been everything. The sky doesn't disappear when we recognize that it's not the clouds. It's revealed in its true nature, boundless, open, accepting of whatever arises. Part 8, Living Awake, Compassion as Natural Response. When we stop fighting with our thoughts, when we recognize them as passing weather and not ultimate truth, something unexpected happens. Compassion naturally arises. Not because we're trying to be good people. Not because we're following moral rules. But because we see clearly. We see that others are also suffering from their own minds. The difficult person at the grocery store is caught in their own storm. The family member who said something hurtful is trapped in their own painful thoughts. We recognize ourselves in everyone. They, too, have mistaken their thoughts for reality. They, too, have forgotten that they are the sky. This recognition doesn't mean we become passive or accept harmful behavior. But it does mean we respond from clarity rather than reactivity. We can set boundaries without hatred. We can speak the truth without aggression. We can protect ourselves without creating more suffering. The Buddha was once asked to summarize his entire teaching in one phrase. He said, "I teach one thing and one thing only, suffering and the end of suffering." The end of suffering, for ourselves and others, this is the fruit of awakening. Not a blissed-out escape from life, but a clear, compassionate engagement with life as it actually is. Part 9, Walking the Path, You Are Already the Sky. If you've stayed with me this far, I want to leave you with something important. You don't need to become the sky. You already are the sky. The awareness that has been listening to this teaching, that has been recognizing itself in these words, that has been quietly present throughout your entire life, this awareness is already free. It has never been touched by the storms that have passed through. It has never been damaged by the painful thoughts that have arisen. It has never been stained by the mistakes you believe you've made. This awareness, your true nature, has been waiting patiently for you to notice it. Like a loving parent waiting for a child to look up from a game, it has always been here, holding you, allowing you to explore, ready to welcome you home. The Buddha's awakening is not reserved for special people in ancient times. It's available to everyone, in every moment, including this one. You might think, but I've done things I regret. I've hurt people. I've wasted time. It's too late for me. These are thoughts. Recognize them. They're clouds passing through the sky. The sky, your awareness, remains untouched. Pure. Ready. There's a beautiful passage from Buddhist teaching, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, that deserve your love and affection. Whatever you have thought, whatever you have done, whatever you have failed to do, you are worthy of peace. You are worthy of freedom. You are worthy of waking up, because you are already awake. You have simply been dreaming that you are asleep. Closing, words to carry with you. Let me leave you with a few words to carry into your day. The next time you find yourself caught in difficult thoughts, spinning with worry, heavy with regret, burdened with self-criticism, remember, these thoughts are not telling you the truth about who you are. They are storms passing through. You are the sky. Take a breath. Create a pause. Name what's happening. And return to this moment, the only moment that's actually real. The Buddha said, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. And there is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. And perhaps most importantly, every morning we are born again. What we do today is what matters most. This morning, right now, you are being born again. Whatever came before, whatever thoughts have tortured you, whatever storms have raged, they have passed. This moment is fresh. This moment is open. This moment is your invitation to wake up. You have everything you need. You are everything you need. If this message has touched your heart today, I invite you to join our growing community at Buddha Coha. We're here every week with teachings, stories, and practical wisdom to support your journey of awakening. Please subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you'll know whenever we share a new video. Leave a comment below and tell me, what thought pattern have you been mistaking for the truth? Sharing brings insight, and your words might help someone else feel less alone. And if you know someone, a friend, a family member, a colleague, who is suffering under the weight of their own thoughts, please share this video with them. Sometimes, the simple recognition that we are not our thoughts can change everything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your openness. Thank you for your willingness to look deeply. May you find peace within the storms. May you remember that you are the sky. And may you walk gently on this precious earth, knowing that every step is the path. Until we meet again, be well, be kind, and be awake.